everyone. My name is Christina Santiago, and I'm coming to you live from Mentoring Winners. We are a ministry that's located in New Jersey, but we are reaching the world via the internet. So I thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited about the topic. This webinar was basically put together because we have a heart and a passion to raise up this generation, the children, the young people, the tweens, and really have them be impactful and influential in today's culture. And if you're watching today, I'm believing that you have that same passion, and we're happy to connect with you and are so glad that you are tuning in. So just so you know a little bit about me, again, my name is Christina, and I am 41 years old. Currently, I'm a manager at a hospital, and basically that's my sphere of influence. I am married. I've been married for approximately 18, 19 years. After a while, you lose count. But I will like to introduce you to my husband. His name is Tito, and he's basically been a pillar in my life. And I think it's really important that we share who we are when we're talking to people we may not know a lot about. Like I said, we've been married for over 18 years. It's been quite a ride. And then we have a 17-year-old son. So I'm talking about generation. I'm talking about raising kids. I've been there, done that, and it's been quite a journey. And I'm sure that if you have small children, big children, I think that we can talk the same language today. And lastly, I'd like to introduce you to my dog. His name is Scout. We got him about a year ago, and he's really a blessing to us. So thank you for joining me today, and I just am going to share my heart with you and hope that you're able to really connect with the vision that we have for this generation and are willing to kind of get on board with us in terms of changing this world around for the glory of God. So today we're going to start just sharing a little bit about culture, because I think it's really important that we understand what culture is. It's a word that we hear a lot. We hear it at work. We hear it in the church. We hear it when we're hanging out with our friends. But what is culture? How does that have anything to do with me, right? Well, culture is intangible. It's not something you can actually hold in your hands. It's not something necessarily that you can put in a box. So what happens is sometimes when something isn't in your face like that, you tend to not pay attention to it. It's kind of automatic, and it's hard to measure or improve when it's not something you can hold in your hands. But culture is basically a way of life of any group of people. And right now we're talking about children, tweens, teens, and their culture may be very different from our culture in our age group, whether we're 20, 30, 40. I'm 41 now. I still feel like I'm in my 30s, maybe 20s. But so we're talking about our kids and what is the culture that they're growing up in today? So basically, when we're talking about culture, we're talking about behaviors, beliefs, value systems, and symbols that they accept, and generally without thinking about them, because everybody's kind of doing it. It just becomes part of what we do. And these beliefs, these values, these symbols, behaviors, they're passed on from generation to generation.
Get into that because we need to teach this generation that the pursuit of happiness is not what really concerns us as believers. We are really to pursue, if we are to pursue anything, we are to pursue the kingdom of God, because Jesus said, seek, meaning pursue what? The kingdom. And then what? He said, all these things shall be what? Added unto you, meaning what? That once you pursue the principles of the kingdom, in other words, once you pursue the principles that make the kingdom of God work for you, then he says all these things, and one of them is what? Prosperity, satisfaction, contentment, and then happiness is going to come to you.
And that is why we have to begin to build a kingdom culture. Our title for today is Mentoring This Generation Children with Truth Before They're Mentored with Lies. And of course, as soon as they come out of the womb, mentoring starts. Mentoring is a lifelong commitment, and I hope you'll join me in that journey. There are three categories of, I would call maybe believers within the culture, and that's a culture defender. We have a culture creator, and then we have culture engagers. And so what is that, and who are you? Maybe you're all three. Maybe right now you find yourself more of a culture engager, which is someone who is not necessarily taking or partaking in, let's say, the sinful portion of our culture, but you're embedded in the culture. Your friends may not be believers, but you're integrated yourself in that environment. So you're a culture engager. You're in there, right? Culture defenders, they normally defend the faith. They normally stand up for the truth very visibly, very out there, sharing about Jesus. And not that a culture engager doesn't, but we want to create a balance between these three, which is lastly, the culture creator. And the culture creator is the individual who is an engager, but rather than kind of integrating with the exterior culture, they actually create a new culture. And again, what is that? Behaviors, values, communication style, language, all of that, new norms, new things that we can do that are linked up to the word and linked up to the principles that God has given us within that word. So I don't know who you are today. Maybe by the end of this session, we will kind of pinpoint that. But just to move on a little quick, we don't have a lot of time today. It is a free seminar, and we want to try to keep it nice and quick for you so you don't feel, I guess, too stuck on this electronic device. But let's quickly touch a little bit on our children, what their exposure is. And I'm talking from babies who hold iPhones in their hands and iPads and all these different devices up to teenagers who are in front of TVs, movie screens, and all that kind of good stuff. We want to really take a good look at what their world looks like. Snapchat, Google Plus, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Pinterest, Twitter, YouTube, Vine, LinkedIn, all of these different avenues. And then now we have even Hulu and Netflix and all of these different other streams of influence on our children, our teens. And so we really need to realize what their world is like right now. And when I was doing research for this seminar, I was just appalled. I was appalled. I did some searches on YouTube, and I was looking at, okay, well, what cartoons are our children exposed to right now? Parents are depicted as weak. They're depicted as stupid, silly sidekicks. Authority is not respected. And we're talking from, I remember actually Tom and Jerry. And when I think back to Tom and Jerry, they're just hitting each other all day, and we wonder why our kids are beating each other up. So we may not realize how much influence is just raining upon them. And I want to share some statistics with you, if I may. This is probably more for our teens, I guess. In 4 hours of The Walking Dead, which, by the way, was a very popular movie, especially for those of you who enjoy horror movies. I personally don't. I've tried to keep them out. But you know what? A lot of people do, and a lot of believers do. Initially rated as TV-14, believe it or not, for children, they saw, or whoever watched this movie, saw a gun every 2 minutes, 126 gun depictions or shootings, 546 acts of violence, 202 dead bodies, 82 stabbings, 54 individuals being injured or killed or gunfire, 90 guns, 80 bladed weapons, 33 decapitations, and 21 attempted shootings. And this is what they're being exposed to in 4 hours. Imagine 4 years. Imagine I start thinking about it and I do the math and it's staggering. It's scary. So we need to really take an active role in what our kids are being exposed to and care about it enough. And we'll talk a little bit about why we should care about that. Just to go on a little bit more, want to touch on video games, right? I mean, who doesn't have a child who plays video games these days? If you have a kid, you probably have some sort of connection to a video game, whether it's on the phone, whether it's on a PlayStation, whether it's on a Wii, they're exposed. So 75% of American households with more than one child have video game equipment. Approximately 40% of families with preschoolers own video game equipment. 97% of teens ages 12 to 17 play computer, web, portable, or console games, and 50% played games yesterday. So why is that important? Well, I'm just kind of trying to draw the picture of what our kids' world looks like right now. I also wanted to share a few numbers in regards to media. A new study in the Journal of Pediatrics says the average 8-year-old child spends 8 hours a day on media. So it could be TV, it could be an iPhone, it could be anything. So you choose what that is. And a teen typically more than 11 hours of a day. And that could include texting, right? That's media. That could include watching a video, playing video games. In 2011, 36% of teens had a smartphone. In 2014, 79% had smartphones. I'll tell you in a second why that's so important. 13 to 17-year-olds send an average of 3,300 texts per month. More than 58% of children surveyed between the ages of 14 and 17 report having seen pornographic site on the internet or on their phone, even if by accident. 50% of teens ages 3 to 18 frequently communicate online with someone they've never met in person. And 37% have received a link to sexually explicit content, meaning they weren't looking for it, they didn't just stumble upon it, but someone was actually seeking to ensure that they receive that. So does it matter that children and teens have this unlimited access to the internet? Of course it matters. It's a world of exposure to them, access and entryways into their life. So we should care. We should care about the culture that's being created for them by all of these external influences. Just to give you a few more statistics, and I tell you, we need to be like smacked in the face about what's really happening. This is really happening. In 1949, okay, 2% of U.S. homes had television. In 1955, 64%. In 1968, 93%. And in 2007, more than 98% of U.S. homes have at least one television set. In 1970, about 7% of homes had cable television. And I'm just going to speed up to 2008, 60% now do. And again, I want to just let you know why this is so important. Children watching violent broadcast TV shows exposed to guns or blades, weapons, happens every 3 minutes. 2/3 of children in the United States have television sets in their bedrooms. Again, you can't possibly, unless you set some serious controls, know 24 hours a day what your child is watching on TV. Children watch about 28 hours of television a week. Children spend more time watching television than spent in school. Children spend more time watching television in any other activity except sleep. Now I could keep going. I have like tons of stuff. I'm not going to keep going on that. But I thought it was really important for us to really get a quick snapshot of what our child's world looks like right now. I found no statistics really yet. I mean, I'm going to keep doing my research as to how many actual hours a day or minutes a day that they actually spend with people, which is something that, you know, we don't really think about. but we don't necessarily spend time counting, well, how much time do I spend with my child, right? I mean, as long as they're in the room, even if they're doing something else, we tend to think we're spending time with them, but that's not necessarily the case. So I really just want you to think about that. And I wanted to share a couple of verses with you that basically, I guess, touch on mentorship. So we're going to move now from culture, and now we're going to talk about mentorship and how being a mentor and being a mentor in our culture is really going to impact our kids. Mentorship is a very involved and lifelong commitment that we make. And, you know, as parents, obviously we want to make that lifelong commitment. But I think that more than anything today, it's really important that we step up to the plate consciously, just aware of what we're not doing. I think we know what we're doing. You know, we do what we do every day. But I'm not sure that we really are conscious of what we're not doing. And so let me share with you a couple of these verses before we move on to mentorship here. And that's Proverbs 27:17. It says, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Very important verse. You should surround yourself with people that sharpen, and, you know, you can find those that need to be sharpened and spend some time with them. And then also this very popular verse that many of you may already be aware of, and that is, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. So again, train up a child. Think of it as a mentoring commitment that you're making for them. And we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about what that means as we move forward.
I love to communicate to music. I just started communicating with music to my kids. They don't listen to me talking anymore. I just use their songs and get my point across. You know, seriously, you should try it. It's awesome. They do listen. We're at the mall the other day. They're just begging me for an iPhone for an hour. I finally said, dude, I'm not gonna buy you an iPhone, cause you ask for it like you need one. You don't. I'm not gonna buy you an iPhone. You're insane if you think I'll pay for it, so be on your way. I'm not gonna listen. Go away. You're wasting all your time. Here's a dime if you find a payphone, but no iPhone today. And that's what I do.
So we're going to go over one, me first, the builder. We're going to talk about us and why we, really need to consider ourselves before we even think about mentoring. Secondly, the plan. We need to have a plan on how to move forward. How are we going to do what we're going to do? How are we going to mentor this generation? 3, we're going to build. What are we building? We're building lives, right? Well, we're going to go through an acronym called SHAPED. And we're going to hopefully give you a few ideas, simple things that you might be doing already or that you might want to pay a little more attention to in your life to help mentor your child. Pitfalls. And we all know what pitfalls are, but if we don't, we will be knowing today. And lastly, sustainability. Whatever mentoring we do with someone, we want it to be sustainable. So we're going to touch on a few things. Even though there are 5 things, it's rather quick. It won't be too extended. So if you bear with me as we go through this, that'll be great. All right, here we go. So as you can see this little man standing in front of this huge gap, and then you see truth. So we're talking about mentoring our children with truth before they're mentored with lies. And I want to talk to some of you out there that are listening that are not necessarily parents, but are exposed to kids. You too can be a mentor. You don't have to be a parent to be a mentor. So please listen in, because even if one day you become a parent, you'll be able to use these things. So first, me. Let's look at our lives for a quick second. Do we got it all together? Maybe. Are we balancing 100 different things? I know as a mom and as a wife, and I also am involved in the ministry, There's a lot of things going on. I'm a student. My area of study is organizational development. And so there's a lot of things that I'm balancing. However, more than just that, if we start really making a list of things we're balancing, if you look up on the screen for a second, we can see there we have God, family, church, work, bills, stress, birthdays, schools, play dates for our kids or our friends, working out, helping parents, friends, sleep. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And we need to really think about us. Where are we in our walk? We can't forget to do this and we can't forget to do that. We got to remember to pick up this and we got to remember to pick up that. And we get so busy that we completely disengage from what mentorship really is. So we're going to talk about you and me and what that looks like, okay? Yes, you. And I hope that you'll open up your heart today. If you're watching, then that means you really care about mentoring children around you and teens. So I want you to receive this with all love and all kindness that's coming from this side of the camera. And I'm going to be just being completely honest and raw, and hopefully I will bless you today. So here we go. You cannot enforce as right what you don't endorse with your life. And this is something that is a very simple saying. And, if I were to use myself as an example, I can't expect my child not to overeat if I'm overeating in his face or her face, right? I only have a son, but I can't expect it. So same thing with our behaviors. If we're rude, if we're disrespectful, can we really expect our kids not to be? Not really. It's why should they respect us? We're basically telling them to do something we're not doing with ourselves. If we're not exercising and we want them to be healthy and we're not doing what we should do, why should they bother, right? So we want to think about that. Now I'm going to list a few things here that help pinpoint a little bit more of those things that we might be able to identify with as we needed to get it together, okay? Here we go. Anger, procrastination, being greedy, lazy, lying. Are we irresponsible? Do we have a prayer life? Are we selfish? Are we self-centered? Do we stop learning and not read and really engage with learning? And we expect our kids to be A students. Do we exercise self-control? Are we overeaters? Are we disrespectful? Right? All of these are things that some of us struggle with. I know I do, and one of the easiest ones might be anger, right? Or procrastination, probably. So I really think that before we can really start talking about mentoring kids, we really need to think about what can I do in my life so that I build credibility and respect from the children around me so that I have a foot to stand on when I'm really asking them to live a certain life, right? And behave in a particular way. So let's start with, I'm probably going to name, I think it's about 3 different types of people that we may not actually realize we could be them. So be very open. I do tons of reflecting because I know I need a lot of growing to do in my life. I believe that we can always be learning, no matter what stage you're in your life. I don't care if you're 50 or if you're 15. You can be learning something. And I really do believe we need to reflect, stop and think about it. We need to consider things. We need to really say, could I have done that better? Am I behaving the way I should? How can I handle this next time? It's not to make you feel bad. It isn't. It's to help you recognize where you have room to grow. And so we go from glory to glory. God is not finished with us. And I always say this is the first verse my dad ever taught me, Philippians 1:6. He who has begun a good work in us will continue it until the day of Christ Jesus. So if at any point we feel like we've made it, let's get off the horsey and let's keep on walking on that journey because there's still a long way to go. We definitely have to consider ourselves. So here we go. Are you the enabler? I'm sure you've heard this before. We hear this a lot when it comes to drug addicts, enablers, people that help people stay drug addicts. Well, let's think about our kids and what does that mean when we're a parent or we're a mentor for a child? What does that mean? Well, I'm going to go over a couple of these points here. We do things for our children. We justify why we're doing it for our children. We feel bad or guilty if we don't do it for them. And acting on our need to be needed. So what does that mean? What does it mean, the need to be needed? Especially if you're someone who has been a homemaker, right? Which is a very hard job. Doesn't pay a lot of money, but it's probably one of the hardest jobs on the planet to be a mom or a dad at home. When you're always, that's where you find your identity in helping people. So where do you draw the line? Where do you say, you know what, I can't enable this anymore. I have to help this child to go the right direction, right? So if you're that enabler, all right, I want you to consider becoming the empowering rather than the enabler. The empowerer, they let them do it for themselves. Guess what? They're going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. It's just going to happen, all right? And it's important for us to be okay with that. It's important for us to say that failure isn't a bad thing when you can learn from it and rise up and be strong. And next time you can see it coming. Also, feeling good about empowering them. Empowering them isn't always going to be feeling good to them in the beginning, but when you can really say, this is what I'm doing, I'm actually helping them, because rather than doing their laundry for them, now we're talking about teens probably, or older kids, when they leave here, they're going to know how to do their laundry. It's okay that they don't want to. It's okay they're upset with me right now, because in the long run, I think that they're really going to benefit from this, right? So you want to look at the positive side of things and don't be hard on yourself. It's okay for kids to cry. It's just this generation doesn't want their kids to cry, and it's shocking to me. Kids are going to cry. In fact, that's the first thing they do when they come out of the womb. That's how you know they're alive, right? Well, if your child, is asked to do something and they refuse, well, we need to find ways to really empower them, not punish them because they're not just doing what you say, but empower them. And this particular webinar isn't really about telling you what to tell them. It's not the details of, how to handle each situation. This is kind of an overview of mentorship. In the future, we'll have more that are a little bit more detailed. But for now, we're going to try to stay a little bit on the surface. Lastly, keeping your word. The empowerer keeps their word and doesn't give in. And when you do that, you follow through, and there's a credibility and a respect that's built for you as the empowerer. You actually gave them something that day. You actually empowered them to be successful and victorious in an area in their life. And that's a really important thing. All right, so let's go to the next. We have the villain. Okay. So the villain is basically the parent or the mentor the parent or the other person. You could be a friend or an aunt or a cousin that's yelling, angry all the time. And then after all the yelling and anger, you over apologize because you feel guilty. You end up doing things yourself because you have no patience. You have no patience for them to do it. So that's the villain. And we definitely don't want to be the villain, right? We want to come out of that. I think I have a clip here. I'm going to give it a shot and hopefully this works. So bear with me 1 second.
The scripture that so many people think they understand is train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. Well, most people, when I give them that essay exam, sometimes it's an oral essay exam, they flunk it cold. Number one, most of us don't train up children. Most of us train down children. Hey, would you look at that? Look at that mess you just made. What is wrong with you? Didn't I just tell you be careful? Roger. Now, when the milk spills at the breakfast table, we don't need a thrashing or berating. What we need is a rag. And so the Christian home needs to be a place where kids learn to fail. Well, try selling that on the morning shows in America. Hey, Dr. Lehman's here to tell you that your kid needs to fail. Stay tuned after this announcement from Pampers. You know, it's not a very saleable item, but I'm telling you that kids need to learn to fail in a protective environment like the home. And let's face it, we parents, we're pretty imperfect, but how many times do you see a parent look at a kid and say, hey, honey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I should have done that. I was wrong. Would you forgive me? So we're modeling that wonderful activity called forgiveness all the time.
All right, so I think a few important things were said there, and that gentleman has been, you know, a really good contributor to mentoring children and raising children. I'm part of Focus on the Family. That's a clip from one of their clips. But children do need to fail in a safe environment. They don't need to be yelled at. They need a rag. So let's equip them. Let's empower them, and not be that individual that is the yeller and the angry person. Let's think about, and we'll talk a little bit later more in detail about that. So we don't want to be the villain. We want to be the motivator, right? The motivator exercises self-control over their emotions, right? We are growth thinkers, not moment madness people, right? So when something's happening, your mindset, your thought process is going through, well, what can I do? What can I do here to help this person out? How can I really get them motivated to go in the right direction? So, you know, you want to be that person. I think sometimes too often we forget about stopping and thinking about what we're going to do, and we just get mad, okay? We're active forgivers. The motivator has to be an active forgiver because they can't see only the problem. They have to see the person. So if you want to be a motivator, you need to start seeing the potential in that individual. And because when you can see who they can be, then you can motivate them to be that, right? We got to be willing to do the hard thing. It's easy to yell. It's easy to break down. It's easy to get annoyed. It's easy to say, there you go again. It's easy to say, see, I knew you were going to do that. It's easy. You know what's hard? It's hard to forgive. It's hard to not satisfy our need to be angry. It's hard to stop and care about what's going to happen with what comes out of our mouth when we speak to that individual, that child, that young person. So we want to think about that. We want to be builders, not bulldozers, right? We want to help that person grow. We don't want to tear them down. Right? So you want to be that person. And again, you want to see the potential, opportunity, and not the failure. So say with me, I'm a motivator. I'm going to be a motivator. I'm not going to be the villain. I think that, you know, I really believe that, you know, there's this saying that, you know, motivation gets you going, but discipline keeps you growing. Motivation gets you going, right? So sometimes as the mentor, you motivate to get the person going in the right direction, right? Of course, there's a whole slew of other things to keep them going and sustain that behavior, but initially they need somebody to get them going, and I think that can be you. So it's important. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one is the pushover. So if you're the pushover, if your child starts getting upset or angry or whatever happens and you start crying, now don't get me wrong, it's okay to have emotions. And just because you're crying doesn't mean you're a pushover. But when you're crying all the time and you just can't handle anything and you just give in all the time, then I'm going to tell you a few minutes what you can do. If you're retreating and letting them win all the time, you're a pushover. If you're giving in after giving an answer and you're changing your answer, then you're a pushover. When you're not disciplining at all, because disciplining to you is punishment, then you're the pushover. If you're not setting any boundaries, then you're the pushover. So, you know, it's hard to say, well, you know what, I think I'm being a pushover. But some of us are. I'm a pushover sometimes too, and maybe you're not a pushover all the time. But we want to capture that behavior so that we can stop it. And then instead of being a pushover, right, we then can mentor differently. Because you're going to be teaching them something. It's better to be teaching them something good. So rather than a pushover, We want you to be the enforcer. Now, enforcing is not bad. It's not a bad thing to be the enforcer. Let's look at the NYPD, for example. You know, if they are doing things within the policies and the guidelines of what the law says, they're good. They're respectable people. They enforce the law. However, when they're abusive with that power, then they're the villain. They're no longer the enforcer, right? So we want to keep that in mind. So if you're going to be enforcer, your word is solid. Your word is gold. Your yes is yes and your no is no. And the word even talks about that, right? The Bible talks about that. You own up to your responsibility as a parent. What is your role as a parent, as an aunt, as a friend? What is your role? You got to know your role. You got to know your role and you got to be your role, okay? Stick to your plan. One of the things we're covering today is the plan, and I hope that you can make a commitment to stick to that. It's not going to be easy, but I believe you can do it. You can love without reproach because of your credibility. And lastly, empowered to lead and not to make them bleed. So again, the enforcer empowers to lead, empowers with their leadership. They're not just, beating them up and making them feel bad. So I hope that was helpful. That was the portion regarding me and you. It's just briefly wanted to point out a few things, because those things, if we're in those negative behaviors rather than the positive behaviors, we're not going to be successful mentors. We're going to be frustrated, and we're going to be frustrated, and we're going to stay frustrated because nothing's working. So we need to really recognize, are we being enforcers? Are we being empowering people? And I think that makes a big difference. So we've covered me first, the builder. Now we're going to cover the plan. So let's talk about planning. Planning means that you're preparing for something, right? So before you can be a mentor, you need to plan. What's your game plan here? So one of the things we need to do is we need to understand the sovereignty of God. Part of your plan, right, needs to be, because you're going to be building, right? You're the builder, is to know the foundation and core beliefs and core values. We talked about culture earlier, and culture has to do with your value system, your value set, behaviors, and all that stuff. So we need to know who is God, who is our creator. But we also need to recognize as builders that human pride, and I've been through it, and maybe not with God necessarily, but with people, human pride loathes or hates the suggestion that God is absolutely sovereign, because that means that he overrides what we think or what we say with his truth. And we need to be able to buy into that, because if we don't, how could you talk about truth if you haven't accepted truth, if you don't know who God is or know the truth of God? So we need to first recognize the sovereignty of God, his greatness, that there is sin and that there is forgiveness, that there is truth and that there are lies, that there is right and that there is wrong. If we don't believe in the sovereignty of God, then we live a relative life. We believe that whatever works for you, it may not work for you, but it might work for that one. No, there is truth and then there is lie. So first you need to come to that place, and we need to fight the pride that we have sometimes by saying, no, that just doesn't work for me. God is different for me. Well, I need you to pick up that scripture and really dig in. I'm not telling you to listen to me, but to really look at the word and really allow that to saturate within your heart and recognize the sovereignty of God before you can really start to build. Second, we have our approach. When planning, we need to think about, how are we going to behave? We just spoke about that, right? So we need to be intentional about our approach. It's not automatic. It's not something that we're born with. Sometimes we need to behave a way, and we need to be intentional about it. So I always go back to the fruits of the Spirit, and you can look that up. You can Google it. Look up the fruits of the Spirit. If you want to know what reflecting Christ likeness is, the fruits of the Spirit. That is the best guide, in my opinion. Next, we have investment. Learning is essential. Part of your plan means get educated. How do you expect to do something if you don't even know anything about it? right? If your child is struggling with pornography, it happens, but you don't know anything about the effects of pornography, how addicting pornography can be, steps you can take to help children or young people step away from pornography. Invest in your knowledge. Invest in, we have Focus in the Family. There's so many other resources out there to be able to help you. If you have a child, stop buying parenting magazines from ungodly people and start investing in God thinking, in principles from the Word. People who are proven to be those individuals that are pillars within the Christian community, so that you can also connect with that ideology, that thought process of building up your children to be Christ-like. I think that learning is essential. Next, we have relationship. Everything is birthed from relationship. If you don't have a relationship with someone, you cannot be their mentor. I usually realize that sometimes the people we love the most, we mistreat the most. And then when someone comes over to our house who's not even family, they're treated like gold. They're treated like gold. Would you like something to eat? Would you like something to drink? I know people, though, they treat everybody the same. They're the best. But sometimes, and I'm talking about me, I'm not talking about you, right? When I say this, I mean, when we're hearing this, I want us to really reflect on ourselves. Are we being that person? We need to build relationships. The most important relationship starts in the home. And if we're investing more time in external relationships, then we've missed the boat. We've missed the boat. So part of our plan should be to build relationships. Next is to understand this generation. And we talked about culture. We spoke about statistics. You need to know what your kids are watching. You need to know the music they're listening to. I went online one day on YouTube and I started to listen to some secular songs, and I was flabbergasted at the sexuality that comes through those songs that children are singing, that with just stuck in their ears, just feeding their minds with nonsense, violence, sexual innuendo, the images. I mean, it's soft porn. I couldn't even believe some of these things. And even Disney Channel songs. We're letting them learn about dating and courtship. We're letting them learn about how to treat their parents, how to treat their neighbor, how to build their self-confidence through these things when we allow these things into their lives. So learn the culture, because we're going to have to be culture creators with our kids. So that then when they go out there and they engage with the culture and their culture engagers, they can also be culture creators and not just fall into the trap of the enemy. All right, now you're ready to teach truth. All right, so when we've been able to look at all these elements and we can tie them into our next step, I think we're going to be successful. Those are obviously, this is in no order of importance, and this is definitely this is just a means to an end. There are so many different roads we can take to be mentors, and so many different roads we can take to be successful as mentors. So today we're just giving you a few tools. So we talked about ourselves, we talked about the plan, and now we're going to just briefly go over building. How do we build? And we're going to use an acronym. It's actually called SHAPED. And we're going to go one by one. S stands for shape character. A mentor shapes character. So what are the characters of Christ? I'm not going to start listing them, but there's quite a few. So we want to know that, okay? And we want to focus on character, not only behavior. Why? Because what their character is, it's displayed in their behavior, right? And if we think of an example, if I'm a procrastinator, if part of my character is to procrastinate, then I'm not going to do my homework on time. I'm going to be late all the time. And so I need to change my character and be credible. I need to be responsible. I need to be accountable. And so you want to begin to not just look at the behavior, but go even deeper. Don't just put a Band-Aid and say, stop doing that. That's not nice. Who cares? It's not nice today. Well, is it going to be nice tomorrow? I mean, behavior is changeable every day. The person leaves the room and they go and they do it to somebody else. Well, why? Because you didn't really deal with the underlying issue, which is the character, right? The behavior is only an expression of the character. Then we have H. H stands for help the child. A mentor knows how to get their hands dirty. So cleaning up the mess. I read a story of a guy who was saying he had a candle sitting up on the counter, and he told his child to stop touching, and the child kept touching, and the candle was in a nice glass, container, and the candle fell and it shattered all over the place, and he got upset and he started yelling, and afterwards, he felt really, really bad. And thought he could have had a different approach. And his approach would have been, to teach the child how to handle that situation, as well as help them clean up the glass and clean up everything that needed. You help them clean up the mess. Don't just leave them out there to fry. Help them clean up the mess. We need to be able to apply discipline. And discipline means that we are teaching. Okay, punishment is temporary. That means that you're exuding some sort of negative feeling in that person so they can relate that experience with a negative feeling. But discipline is a lifetime effect because you're teaching them the whys, the reasons. When someone knows the purpose of something, then they might be able to treat it differently. Then we have P. P is pray with the child. And prayer is not only for them, it's also for you. And as you pray with them, it helps you. It actually helps you forgive. It helps you teach them. It helps you work with them. And it helps them connect with God and learn the sovereignty of God. We have E is for encourage them. Be their greatest fan, their cheerleader. Don't let the people out in the street say, oh, you're such a good kid. You tell them they should hear from you more than anybody else, right? That they're doing great and that they have you as a support. And lastly, disciple them, which is basically a type of mentorship. A child can grasp the essence of almost any truth. Don't undermine them. Don't treat them like they're not smart enough to be able to understand what you're saying. Start early and teach them. So again, where are they? Shape character. Help the child. Apply discipline. Pray with the child. Encourage your son or daughter or the child and disciple them. So we're running out of time today, and so I'm just going to quickly end this presentation with the pitfalls. And just in case you don't know what a pitfall is, it's a hidden, unsuspected danger or difficulty. And as a mentor, we want to make sure that we're aware of what they are. So I'm going to go over them just briefly. Lack of structure and guidance, right? When we don't have a plan, we may fail. Lack of clarity of purpose, when we don't understand something, when we haven't done our research, then we might fail. Lack of interest or support from our spouse or family. So if you're looking to be a mentor, get on the same page with your spouse. If you guys aren't on the same page, chances are it's a pitfall. It's not going to be pretty. You're never going to agree, and you're just going to have arguments in public, and your child is going to see you disagreeing, and it's just ugly. So get on the same page and be a united front. Not understanding our role as a mother. What is my role? Get to know who God says your role is so you can be successful. Not intentional about transfer of truth. You just kind of go through life and you're not really saying, this is an opportunity to share truth. You want to do that. Getting too getting too busy to be bothered, right? I can't be bothered with that. It's too much work and we get too busy and that's a pitfall. And lastly, threats with no intention of follow through. If you don't do that, I'm going to, and then they don't do it and you don't do nothing. What does that teach them? That you're weak. You're not a person of your word. So if you're going to give a threat, then follow through and say it once. If you have to repeat that threat, you already failed. So if you say, if you do that again, no TV for a week. They do it again, guess what? No TV for a week, period. There's no negotiation. And that may sound very harsh, but I tell you right now, and I promise you, you will see results and they will be good, not bad. They will be good results. And you have to be the enforcer, and it's not easy, but someone's got to do it. All right, so let's end with sustainability. Sustainability will help us go the distance. And Proverbs 22:6 says, one generation shall commend your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. We want this generation to affect the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. They should be declaring our mighty acts. And not an easy thing to do in this world and in this day and age. But for sustainability, we need to be reflecting on our gains and our losses. So when you try something and it doesn't work, think about it. Maybe change your approach. Remember, it's okay to fail. It's okay, because that means you tried something and it didn't work. Try something else. It's not the end of the world. There's so much resources out there, and talk to people. Talk to other people that have been successful and try to, receive from them. And sometimes we're so stuck in our ways, and no matter how much someone encourages us to go a different way, we don't want to hear it. And we continue to fail and we wonder why. So just reflect and think about your gains and your losses. And when you do something great and you see that you've met a milestone with your child, or that child, celebrate. You've done something great. Be happy about it. Daily engagement. If you're not doing it every day, it's not going to be sustainable. That's just the way it is. And lastly, driven by commitment, not motivation. You're not always going to feel like being deliberate. You're not always going to feel like following through. You're not always going to feel like what feeling like the bad guy feels like. And you're not a bad guy. You're being a good guy. So perspective, change how you see things. Well, we've come to an end. I really thank you for joining me today. I know that it's been actually an hour and 17 minutes almost. I didn't actually think it was going to go this long. So if you stood with me, I really thank you. We will be sending those individuals that registered a survey. We'd like to know how we can improve and serve you better. If there are topics you want to learn about, mentoringwinners.org, www.mentoringwinners.org. You can actually contact us there. Send us emails from there. There's a form you can complete and say what you'd like to see. We really want to be here for you. We're a mentorship type ministry. And anything that we can do to support you and help you, and topics we can bring to uplift you and make you successful in what your ventures are, we're here. We're here to support that. So we love you. We say goodnight and hope to see you next time.
Time is precious. Our kids grow up so fast, and we want to give them so much along the way. So we do our best to give them education, experiences, values, and ourselves. But along the way, life can get so distracting. In our busyness, we miss opportunities right in front of us. But God cares too much for our families to let these moments go. God loves our families and our kids enough to help us rewrite priorities, minutes, lives, eternity. So while life has its distractions, it also has its opportunities. Capture those moments and engage, experience, thrive. Family is beautiful.